in East St. Louis, how they're the military, the U.S. Army just confirmed, yeah, we were actually testing on you guys back during the Cold War, 60s and 70s. So they had these big trucks that go through the city. And there's testimonies of people who are alive today saying when they were a kid, they used to see these huge trucks with these big nozzles on them, and they were spraying. They were just spraying. They're like, what is that? And then it had like texture to it and smelled weird. They just thought nothing of it, right? They're just like, okay, I guess they're spraying for sanitation or something. Mm-hmm. Later on, come to find out, it's a carcinogen that they were spraying that was causing cancer. Some of the people with testimonies saying they lost their brother to liver cancer and this cancer and this cancer because they were testing it because they wanted to use it on Russia. They said that part of the region of Illinois had the same terrain as Russia. So they're like, oh, this is a good place to test. Test lab rats, like the CIA. This is what they're doing to us.
I said I'm never coming back again. Next I stepped away from the mirror. I got my mind made up now, 'cause I can see the future much clearer.
This is about not teaching history, reparations, and but I've never owned slaves type of people, right? Or the other groups of people who go, oh, our experience is like the black experience. Y'all gonna have to start showing. This was the 50s and 60s in East St. Louis. Ironically, East St. Louis is east of St. Louis, but it's actually in Illinois. But y'all don't where are these stories of, oh man, they put radioactive dust in the air because they wanted to test against Russia. Right. So, we're all Americans. This is why black people are like, oh, we ain't trying to hear all that. We're all Americans. We all patriotic stuff. Because this is the 50s and 60s. Okay? This is great-grandparents, grandparents. Some of our parents, depending on, when they were born. But this stuff is not new. That's what the Tuskegee experiment, which also a military experiment, right? It was dumb, and it was purposefully racist, but that's what it was. But then they go, what about other stuff? What about all of the black towns that submerged underwater? Now, people talk about Lake Lanier, but there are towns in Mississippi, Alabama. They tried to do that. What a lot of people don't know, in New Orleans, when the levees broke from Katrina like 20 years ago, and then people they blew up. Some people felt like they blew up the levees. That's because like 100 years prior to that, like in the 1910s, 20s, they actually blew up the levee in New Orleans to flood people out. That actually happened. So but there's towns underwater in Alabama, California, Oregon, Colorado, and I'm naming the ones. It's north, south, east, and west, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Connecticut, Maryland, New York. You get what I'm saying? So, and these are towns that they flooded underwater. People don't talk about the Devil's Punch Bowl. I just look that up. But a lot of times, we go, well, what's black people's issue? Why are black people? And I'm gonna say this: a lot of y'all in America, just across the board, y'all purposely don't know black history because it'll shine a light on which all these groups are participating in. And some of you don't know black history because it wasn't taught, and people don't pass on things. But this stuff, like the plants, when they have like the chemical plants. Normally, when they have chemical plants, black people near the plant. Normally, the chemical plants about black neighborhoods. So people, even in Louisiana, Cancer Alley. That's real. That's real. And but people don't, and I think they got chemical plants out in California like that, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but it's like, oh, we're not talking about this or that, this doesn't make sense. I remember when I say this doesn't make sense, it's like, what everything that's happening to black folks in America is conspiracy or something. When no, this is actual fact, right? I remember when Prince was alive and he was talking about chemtrails. When the planes used to leave chemtrails in the neighborhoods, and it's like, damn, like it's like he felt like people started acting different from chemtrails, and years later they talked about chemtrails. And sometimes when they talking about the the radioactive material, like in East St. Louis, that wasn't the only place they did that, by the way. But it's set up like when they do bug sprays, like people who've been in cities that have like bugs and mosquitoes, they know they would have these trucks that just spray, and they be coming on the block, and it's supposed to be bug spray, but sometimes it wasn't bug spray. But even if it was bug spray, it was kind of weird. Like, what the fuck is y'all doing? Y'all like, cause y'all do y'all do this in other places? And the older you got, the more you was like, some of the things that went on in black neighborhoods, if you moved away from black neighborhoods, you didn't see anymore. Now, like, take into consideration voting. You know what I'm saying? There's plenty of stories, and it's been going on for a long time. And this happened even when I was in college. You go to college and you try to vote, but you're not in the city, in the state that you graduated high school from, and you black, they're gonna give you problems because they don't want you voting, in these towns where these colleges are. So that was, oh well, you're not from here, like, but I'm an American citizen. Let me write in my, no, you can't do it. It was BS, but that was the thing. And then because people like to talk about, oh, incarceration and forget all of that. Forget all that. Let's talk about this other stuff. Let's talk about this type of stuff. You know what I mean? Because people go, oh, what happened? Like, people were stealing people's land. This was like, what he was talking about was giving people cancer. I talked earlier about flooding people, killing people basically in their towns by flooding them. But then they were stealing people's land, just outright stealing. You know, and people go, that's not true. And I'm like, listen, I have a picture. My mom gave it to me yesterday, actually. I think I have another picture of it too. My great granddad, I never met him. He was dead. I met my great grandma. When my great granddad was in the military, he got out, bought some land, cattle, wound up having oil on the land, yada, yada, yada. When my great granddad died, when that great granddad died, they tried to kill my great grandmother to steal the land. And it's not like, oh, and they did steal the land because they tried to kill her, like she had to move. So, so when I was a kid, she was in the St. Bernard projects, but I didn't know about the story until I became an adult, though. You know what I mean? So, but that story is not like an anomaly. You know what I'm saying? My grandfather, and because I spoke about this before, my grandfather, war vet, came home, couldn't do the VA loan thing, uh, so had to buy a house through like the third party guy, white guy, and of course he made all the payments, and the guy stole the house. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's not nothing new. And here we go with this stuff. Oh, thank you for your service, and American, and you're a veteran. Shut up. Shut up. Because this is the type of stuff they do. Those are two stories about veterans, and they ain't the only ones that I know like that. You get what I'm saying? But those are family stories, though. Then got to talk about it. Even now, when they say black women go to the hospitals and die when they're having a baby, because they're black, so they're black. Who cares? Even Serena Williams almost died. The only reason she didn't die because she was Serena Williams, and they had to attend to her. But the same thing that happened to countless black women who've been having the babies has happened to even the good. Like she almost died because of that. So, but it's because of uh, racial malpractice and racial ideologies. And even my father had a heart attack, I think. He at that time he had a heart attack, and he died in he's alive, but he died in a hospital, and somebody brought him back, and basically he said, "He's a black doctor. He was a Cuban. He's black. He's a black Cuban doctor. Uh, did a resuscitating because the nurses who weren't black, he was like, I'm not touching them. You know what I'm saying? So that's a thing." But because even we're even big vicious individuals even when we die, but that stuff is normalized. Then and the thing about the government, Tuskegee experiment about the government, the stuff I told you of veterans, and even going back to the quote unquote war on drugs, that was the government was in the dope game, but black people got blamed for it. You get what I'm saying? So when people talk about history and reparations and all this other stuff, and people, I've never had to do anything with anything, and I haven't even talked about the countless patents and inventions that were stolen from the from during slavery, but it don't quote unquote count. But even after slavery, Reconstruction, of Jim Crow, to now, and some of y'all don't realize, uh, um, that's why Robert Johnson. Is it Robert Johnson? I want to say it's right. You can say Mr. Johnson, the brother that he was a NASA scientist and engineer. He made the Super Soaker. That's why he made sure he had his patent together, and he didn't have black people on the commercials because they wouldn't have never did it. You get what I'm saying? Because when they found out it was a black guy who was making millions of dollars from the Super Soaker, it was way too late. He was like 10, 15 years in it already. But up until just now, and I say that because Walter Johnson, Mr. Tendenism. He had the same situation that just happened. So, but this is the type of stuff people go, oh, they just overlook it, like, oh my God, it's not a big deal. And other races of people come, we came here, we worked hard. You ain't never had none of this stuff happen to you while you were working hard. None. So I don't want to hear it. You got your issues, that's cool, but don't try to say this is happening to you when you get here or when you've been here, because it don't. Because some of y'all participate in this type of stuff. But I'm gonna leave it at that. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Peace.